Welcome back to the Lineout Lab. My name is Peter O'Donnell. Following the loss to New Zealand last week, Ireland's lineout has come in for a lot of criticism. One area in particular has been the lineout calling of James Ryan. In this video, I'm going to look at how all is not lost for the Irish lineout. If you're new to the channel, please click that subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner of your screen where you'll get access to loads of additional content from me. Please also like and share the video to help the discussion grow. Thank you. So while the lineout malfunctioned at times, there were signs for optimism. To begin, Ireland had a good start to the game, with a nice early exit. In this area of the pitch, New Zealand's man marking or mirror defence can put you under a lot of pressure, so using Josh van der Flier or the +1 to come in and backlift was a nice little change-up. With many people questioning the selection of Peter O'Mahony in the team, we get a really good example of what he offers and how strong he is in the air, as this lineout is pretty well contested by New Zealand. Ireland use a multiple movement here, an extra double dummy to get to the front of the lineout, which if we actually watch New Zealand, you can see how much Whitelock and Retallick are working with their defence to put pressure in the air. Just check out Whitelock's footwork as he commits to jump and then adjusts to the backlift. Nonetheless, Ireland win the ball, but unfortunately off this maul they get turned over, which leads to a try for New Zealand. Before I offer up a few suggestions as to what Ireland could do in the second test, I'd like to tell you about two new online coaching courses that I've just launched, both aimed at the lineout throw. One for coaching beginners and one for coaching experienced players. I'll put the details in the description. As well as New Zealand's very good man marking or mirror defence, we can see how they apply pressure on teams. Here they close the gap, which doesn't always get picked up by referees. The other thing they do quite well in this example is they put Tadhg under pressure as he catches the ball. It's a good movement and option for Ireland, but watch how Surveyor just gets up and puts a bit of pressure on Tadhg's hand as he goes to catch the ball. You can argue it's a penalty, but nonetheless, the dark arts of the lineout, a lot of teams, a lot of players get away with this. As a result of this pressure, Ireland get turned over here and New Zealand get the ball. So New Zealand are always looking to put you under pressure. One area in particular where they did quite well, I felt, at the weekend was with their maul defence. They didn't give Ireland much opportunity to get go forward. As we can see here, even though Ireland got a little bit of movement forward, they're not really under massive pressure. When Ireland got turned over at the lineout, how much of it was self-inflicted? Was it down to the decision, or was there good pressure from New Zealand? Well, if we look at some of the options that they took, we see an example here of a quick movement where they go to the front middle, but New Zealand are able to pick them off because, as I say, their man marking or mirror defence is really, really good. Again, just have a look at Retallick here as he gets up and puts pressure on Byrne. This lineout ultimately resulting in a maul turnover and New Zealand get the scrum. In this lineout, Ireland go for a throw jump option off the hooker to James Ryan in the middle back, which, to be fair, is good defence, but I think Ireland could have been a little bit tighter in how they trigger the movement. Well, as we watch again, keep your eye on Surveyor at the back of the lineout and Whitelock in particular. Whitelock's watching Peter O'Mahony for his body language. O'Mahony's watching the hooker. The movement is going to be triggered by the hooker's throw, and New Zealand are able to get up and put pressure on them. So watch Whitelock. He's watching O'Mahony. Now watch Surveyor and how he reacts to Treadwell's trigger to get into that nice backlift position. So New Zealand, to be fair, defended it quite well, but perhaps Ireland could have been snappier in their movement. As we move on to an option that Ireland had inside the 22, Ireland do something similar where they throw to the middle back with James Ryan, but New Zealand are able to get up and are unlucky not to actually win the ball, but they do pick them off. So as you watch here, looks to be a similar option. New Zealand front man number 6 gets up just in front, picks him off, but somehow it bobbles into James Ryan's hands and Ireland are able to set up a maul. So Ireland were a little bit lucky there. It was pretty good defence by New Zealand. So we've seen a few different options that Ireland have used there, where they've either gone with a quick throw to Tadhg Byrne or one movement in a throw jump there to James Ryan, which New Zealand's mirror defence is well equipped to deal with because they're the best in the world at it. So where did Ireland have success? Well, here we're going to see a turn movement from James Ryan to lift Peter O'Mahony in behind him. And whilst this is one movement, it's actually very hard to defend, as we see here. And it's an option Ireland have used a lot in recent times and have had a lot of success with. They've used it off 5-man lineouts, 6-man lineouts and 7-man lineouts. here most recently against Japan, where we see them get up. And it's quite a hard movement to defend, particularly if you get the throw and the shape of the throw right. Ireland come back to it again in the second half, and we can see how hard it is for New Zealand to defend. This is actually a good line-out call from James Ryan because New Zealand have Retallick off the pitch and they've changed the way they're defending. They may still have been on a mirror, but Ryan was able to read the body shape of the middle jumper. If we see here again, we can see his hips and shoulders are facing more towards the hooker, which is going to make it very hard for him to turn around and mirror James Ryan here. So a well-worked movement by Ireland. Next, we're going to see two line-out turnovers, which appears to be more on the throw. To be fair to Dan Sheehan, he's relatively new still to international rugby, but he's shown obviously his quality in all areas of the pitch, and to be fair, his throwing is quite good. So let's watch these two, and I'll explain why I think there's signs for optimism with these options. As we watch them again, in this one we see how Ireland use O'Mahony really well, and what I mean by that is New Zealand know that he's very quick at getting up, and because of their mirror defence, they're going to react to those movements. It's going to get them to bite if it's done well enough and quick enough. So here it's done really well that New Zealand actually don't really get up because Whitelock goes to jump and Barrett goes to jump, and which means that Whitelock doesn't actually have a back lifter because Barrett goes to jump as well. So it's well worked. It just so happens that Sheen has probably put a bit too much on the throw. So you could argue that that's actually a pretty good line-out call, and the thought process behind it was quite good. It doesn't make it any easier that Ireland messed it up, but it does show that you can beat that type of defence. And we see it here again as New Zealand bite on O'Mahony, and then Ireland, they get up uncontested, but unfortunately the throw has probably got a bit too much on it, or the timing is a fraction early. So there we see a couple of examples of how Ireland have manipulated New Zealand's mirror defence and were able to, nearly win the ball and win the ball with that turn option. Another area that Ireland might look to exploit is how New Zealand defend inside the 22. Ireland had 12 entries and a number of lineouts inside the 22, but they didn't get much purchase out of it. Here we see New Zealand defend the front wall with 3, and then others assessing in case they shift or swing their weight around the corner on either side of the maul. New Zealand's body positions are really good here, as Ireland did get a bit of momentum, but New Zealand were able to nullify it. So if New Zealand are able to nullify it with only 3 men, perhaps Ireland need to add more weight on either side and try and swing around the corner, which to be fair, they do here, and it almost works. It actually results in a penalty for Ireland. The other option they could look to do is try and exploit the fact that New Zealand only have 1 man in the channel, which is something both Ireland and Leinster have exploited in recent times. Here we see Leinster against Glasgow in recent weeks where they get a bit more weight on the blind side. Glasgow only have their scrum half in the channel, and it makes it very, very difficult to defend that. Now, if New Zealand defend like they did in the World Cup with a forward in the channel, it's going to make it very difficult to do this option. Not only that, but keep your eye on Kieran Reid here and notice how he comes around the blind side because they knew Ireland favoured this option and liked this option. So maybe it's time to revisit this if New Zealand defend this way. So let's quickly recap. Ireland actually made some good decisions, but just their own execution let them down at times, which you'd like to think is easily fixable. When you have new combinations, it can take time to bed those down. And certainly for me as a coach, I'd always be worried if the decision making was lacking, which I feel at times actually wasn't as bad as it was made out to be. But what else could Ireland do? Ireland could look to do more movements, one movement with a quick jump straight after that. And maybe they could look to try and get more speed into their line out in terms of how quickly they set. Here we actually see a really good example in the Super Rugby final with the Crusaders. And just notice here as you freeze the clock at 4:18, the ball is just going to touch. And now notice when Whitelock catches it at 4:26. So if we don't beat them with that first movement, I think we need to maybe set a bit quicker. Perhaps in the maul, we could get a little more weight on one side of the front maul. So there's just a couple of thoughts from me. It certainly it makes the second test very intriguing. I know as a coach, it's easier said than done to make a few adjustments, and it's going to be very intriguing to see how it unfolds. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.